We are in Basi Legani, Tafshin Yud, the mime of the previous Rebbe, 5780. And we're using the Hebrew English text. We are on page 42, not today, no. I mean, Dubov is coming in instead. Yeah.
Oh, so.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm not feeling well, but hopefully we'll be here tomorrow. But well, it's so early in the morning, you know. The last thing we learned was about is drawing a parallel, a number of things that we can draw a parallel between the korbanos that we bring on a personal level, which means my personal nefesh Bahamis, and the korban that is brought in the Beis Hamikdash, literally a behema, an animal. 42. Good morning. And the one of the points that he brought out was, it started to explain, is that just like the Gashmis, what we did was we took the meat of the animal, and the meat was consumed by the fire. And what kind of fire was this? Not an ordinary fire. This is a fire that came from heaven. It was a miraculous fire that miraculously from Shemayim was put on the Mizbeach. So too, every person in their own personal neshama, we also have a fire that came from heaven, which means it's not something that I created, not something that I produced, but it was given to me from Shemayim. And that is the fire of the Nefesh Elokis, the fire and passion of love that Nefesh Elokis has for Hashem. Good to see you. So, just like the Gashmias, that heavenly fire consumed the meat, so too with us, the heavenly fire, which means the fire of love of the Nefesh Elokis, has to consume our Nefesh Bahamis, meaning that the Nefesh Bahamis will become and be on fire with love for Hashem. So we explained yesterday what this means. There's two possibilities when we're talking about influencing someone else, another person. Well, the same would be when my Nefesh Elokis influence my Nefesh Bahamis. Very often, and you can use this yourself when you have to understand certain sichos or maimarim, when we talk about how the Nefesh Elokis has an impact on Nefesh Bahamis, influences, inspires Nefesh Bahamis, very often we can just think about how one person has an influence on another person. That's two separate people, and this is two separate things within me. But the concepts, the principles are very similar. So imagine there are two people. One of them is inspired, and the other one is not. So very often, just the mere fact that you find yourself, person finds himself in an environment where people around him are inspired, and they're inspired with love for Hashem, that alone makes me feel that inspiration, or at least that I sort of go with the flow. Everyone's like that, and that's why we find that certain people are doing well when they're with the community, when they're around people that are in a good place. But as soon as they or when they go to a situation where they're on their own, they become weaker, because their strength really comes from what's outside of them. And therefore, if they're not in that outside environment, I think I mentioned this one before, Siddim would say, how do you know the difference between a dead fish and a live fish? They're both in the water, and they're both moving. The difference is, if the fish moves only with the current, that means it's a dead fish. If it can go against the current, it's a live fish. In other words, the water is going this way. So then the fish also goes this way. But if it's a live fish, it doesn't only go with the water, it can also go the opposite of the current. So when a person doesn't have sort of that love for Hashem on his own, it's more from the environment. So if I'm in the environment, I'm fine. If I'm out of the environment, then things are different. And that's the greatness of Avraham Avinu. The Gemara says there's a pasuk, Echad Hoya Avram, he was one. What does it mean one? The whole entire world, the whole world was on one side, and he was one single individual on the other side. In other words, not only he wasn't influenced by his city, by his neighborhood, by his country, the whole world was different, and he went against that current because he was emes, and it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. So, how do I get my Nefesh Bahamis? Sometimes Nefesh Bahamis could also be sort of pulled in to the davening, to the learning, but not really pulled in. Nefesh Kiss is on fire, and Nefesh Kiss is involved, and Nefesh Bahamis is, in a sense, not interfering because it's overwhelmed by what's going on. But how can I do something else that Nefesh Bahamis itself, in its own right, should be excited about godliness? Nefesh Bahamis means the part of me that's like a behemoth, which means it's only interested in gashmizik, physical, materialistic pleasures, eating and drinking and fun and sports and money and whatever, whatnot, but not godliness. So the answer is, that's what we learned yesterday. The answer is that he has to think about Hashem, about thoughts that will stimulate love for Hashem, but not just any thoughts. It has to be such thoughts that the animal part of me can also relate to it and can grasp it. And it could penetrate the part of my brain, which is the animal part of me. And then even that animal part of me will get excited. I gave an extreme example yesterday, which means that if you're learning about Atzilus, right, my Nefesh Bahamis is not going to get excited. But if I think and I meditate on something like Hashgacha Pratis, how I went into my business, and there was a certain customer that I was looking for the last 5 years, and I could never find him. And all of a sudden, he just shows up because of this and that. And you see the chain of events, how Hashem orchestrated that. I should meet this person, and now this is going to give me a very big benefit in my business. Then the Nefesh Bahamis could relate to it as well. It's something godly, but something Nefesh Bahamis could get excited as well. There's actually a story with two Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. No, I think it was the Mitzvah Rebbe. The Mitzvah Rebbe, which is today his Yontif, had one chassid who was named Rabbi Pesach, one of the biggest chassidim in that generation. There was another chassid whose name was Rabbi Hillel. I think you heard more of him, Rabbi Hillel Parachah, very famous chassid. And the difference between them was they were both a tremendous chassidim, but the difference is Rabbi Pesach was more in the intellectual world. Rabbi Hillel Parachah was more in what we call the avodah. He was always working on himself, and his main thing was avodah more than anything else. And of course, again, they were both complete in both areas, but just one was more dedicated to the intellectual, one more to the avodah. One time, Rabbi Hillel Parachah met the students of Rabbi Pesach. So he said to them, so what are you learning in Chassidus now? So they answered, we're learning about Ur Insof Shalifnat Tzimtzum, which means you're learning about the infinite light before Hashem made the first symptom before creation. So he said, so what are you davening with? In other words, this thought and these ideas are so distant, it's so abstract, it's so up there. How does that affect you in davening to get your Nefesh Bahamis on fire? So their answer was, yes, when we say Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu, so we know who we're talking to. But again, that's more than Nefesh Kiss, not the Nefesh Bahamis. For the Nefesh Bahamis to get on fire, it has to be something Nefesh Bahamis could relate to. And here he's going to go into a little bit more the details how we can accomplish that. Let's start again from on page 42. After he said that the idea of a carbon is that the Nefesh Bahamis should have love for Hashem, start from the second line. No, I'm doing, whatever I'm doing in class, I'm looking at the bottom, under the line, where it has the Hebrew English. Because as it says, you should love Hashem with all your heart. With both of your Yetzer Tov and your Yetzer Hara. Like we said yesterday, why does it say Levavacha with two bays? And it should say B'chol Lipcha. The answer is it's coming to allude to the fact that we have to involve our Nefesh Habamis and our Nefesh Elokis. And how does that happen? Is that boy they slapshus on Nefesh Elokis, but Nefesh Habamis. This comes by the Nefesh Elokis being mislabish, which they say enclosed. I think more of it like the Nefesh Elokis has to invest itself in the Nefesh Habamis, which means to speak to the Nefesh Habamis, to think about things that the Nefesh Habamis could relate to. The Tchila, because initially, Harei Nefesh Habamis ain't shum yediyah v'hergi b'nyoni and kus klal. The Nefesh Habamis, that part of him which is Bahamis, an animal, has no knowledge of godliness and doesn't have any feeling for godliness whatsoever. Try to imagine there's the World Series, and this team just won the World Series, and people are celebrating and screaming and shouting, and there's all the causes and what happened? How come people are dancing in the streets? They say, well, the Yankees won the World Series. You think he gets excited? He doesn't even know what you're talking about. It's like doesn't relate to him. In that way, the Nefesh Habamis is the reverse. When you tell the Nefesh Habamis something godly, not only doesn't understand, doesn't even relate to it. He understands food, he understands pleasure, he understands what a baby understands. So the Nefesh Habamis doesn't even relate to godliness. That's what he's saying. Not only he doesn't understand, he has no feeling for godliness. However, they Yislapshus and Nefesh Elokis, by the Nefesh Elokis investing itself in Nefesh Habamis. Like I said before, it's like speaking to another person. I speak to that part in me, which is the Nefesh Habamis. And I meditate on a godly concept. That the Nefesh Habamis could also relate to it and understand it. Page 43. Through this, that's how the Nefesh Habamis becomes closer. Remember, we said that the word korban literally is translated as sacrifice, but the root of the word in Hebrew is karev, closeness. The point is to get the Nefesh Habamis close to Hashem. That part of me should also be excited about Hashem. There was a student there. Her English name was Judy, and her Jewish name was Yehudis. And we were talking after she was here for over a year or two. And she said like this: before I came here, I was Judy. I had no idea who Yehudis is. After I came here, I was on fire. I was Yehudis. There was no Judy. By now, Yehudis and Judy got together and they won. I thought it was a very deep thought, brought out in a very simple way. But this is the point. In fact, it's explained in other places in Chassidus. First, there's a general impression that it has on Nefesh Habamis, that godliness is also something that could be comprehended and you could relate to. He says it's very brief, but in other Maimarim, they elaborate on this much more. And that is that there's two stages on how the Nefesh Elokis has influence on Nefesh Habamis. Some of you might remember it from a Maimer we learned last year. And it gives the example that if you have a piece of wood, a block of wood, a log, and you want to make a, let's say, wooden bowl out of it, what do? First, you have to cut out the wood from the log. You cut it out. And then you start cutting it in, so to speak, and to make a place in this piece of wood that it could receive soup. It should be a bowl. Spiritually, what does that mean? It means initially the Nefesh Habamis, when you say the Nefesh Habamis about something godly, it's literally like speaking another language. because this is something which doesn't relate to him. Many people say that. I remember when speaking to someone, it was an interesting story. We had a program out in the country just for the summer, and there was a girl that was very excited, and she said she's very excited about everything, but she has a problem. Her boyfriend is totally not interested. So she wants to bring him here for a day, and he should speak to the rabbis. The poor guy, she set him up with appointments with every single rabbi in the program. So anyway, I remember speaking to him. He sits down and he said, I want you to know, before we start, I'm an atheist, the son of an atheist. And nothing really matters. It's just if my car could make it to work, and that's all I care about. That's the Nefesh Bahamis that he's describing here. When you start talking, she's talking godliness, spirituality, and he's saying like, I don't know what you're talking about. Do we have money to pay the mortgage? Yeah. Which store is the best place to go shopping? Where can I get this food? What is the best restaurant? These are the thoughts. You're talking about higher level, lower level spirituality. It's not that I don't understand. It's like it's not my reality. I don't know what you're talking about. So the first stage is to introduce Nefesh Bahamis. Hello, there's another world out there. And it's a real world, and it's a good world, and it's a world that you can enjoy. That's the first step, just to be introduced that there is such a thing as Ruchnius, and that you could appreciate it also. Then, step 2 is to start explaining something Ruchnius that can understand. The first step is more of a breakthrough. That's like the breaking through that there's such a concept. And the second step is to get more into it.
What would you say to him?
The end was very interesting. The end was, he said, for example, I believe in the idea of Shabbos. What I mean to say is I think it's a great idea, 1 day a week, stop everything, don't get involved in anything, relax. It's amazing, but I don't think it has to be on Saturday. I'd like to do it on a Wednesday. I'd like to do it on a Monday sometime. Each week could be different. Why does it have to be on that day? So this is what I told him. I said that on Saturday, there's a certain spiritual light and energy that's shining in the world. And therefore, that enables us to do it. If we would do it any other day of the week, it won't have the same effect. It won't work. So the atheist, the son of the atheist says, oh, that's the first time I heard something that really makes sense. I want to say, I thought you said you're an atheist. You only care about the bank and whether the car is going to make it to the bank. I don't know whatever happened at the end. I never heard from her again after the program. But it was just interesting. He just finished saying he's an atheist, doesn't believe in anything, meaning everything is just Gashmias. And all of a sudden, he says, it's the first time I heard something that makes sense.
How did they stay together?
Right, so I don't remember what happened. It's either one of them brought the other one up, or the other one brought the other one down.
Or they
met somewhere in the middle, or they said goodbye to each other. It happens sometimes in the secular world that two people say goodbye to each other. So the first thing is, like, just to sort of to try to get the Nefesh Bahamis to even listen. I mean, it's a joke, but they tell the story that a guy bought a donkey, and the one who sold him the donkey said, "This donkey, you have to pay much more money because it's not an ordinary donkey. This donkey is the kind of donkey that will do anything you want it to do." And he praised the donkey, how loyal it is, and how it's an exceptional, good donkey. Okay, so he paid the extra money, he bought the donkey. The next day, he tries to get the donkey to go to work, and the donkey doesn't budge, like a donkey. And the expression in English, like a stubborn mule. They're cousins, they're related. Anyway, he's trying as hard as he can. He can't. He's furious. He goes back to the seller, and he says, you took so much money from me. You convinced me that it's an amazing donkey. What kind of nonsense is that? He wouldn't even get up to work. So wait a second. Wait, let me take care. He goes over, takes a big stick, gives the donkey a zets in the back. He gets up and he starts moving. That I can also do. I thought you said he listens. Yeah, but first you have to give him a zet that he should hear you. Once he hears you, now you can tell him what you want him to do. So that's the first step. The Nefesh Bahamis doesn't even hear what you're saying. It does not even relate to it. So we have to approach it in such a way. But it doesn't go into what that means, Baruchnius. And after that, not only eventually we can get the animal to also have love for Hashem, but there's a pasuk, Rab Tuis B'Koyach Sher, which means you can harvest the field and with the strength of an ox. The things that an ox does in a field, the human being can do. They have much more strength than a person, which means when we get my Nefesh Bahamis to be motivated and stimulated to love Hashem, it's even stronger and more intense than the Nefesh Elokis. The Nefesh Bahamis could be transformed from its animalistic way, and it becomes consumed, and it becomes included in the fire of the Nefesh Elokis, and it itself becomes on fire, and in fact that fire is even greater than the fire of the Nefesh Elokis. And again, it just states a fact, it doesn't explain it. How could it be that the fire of the Nefesh Bahamis should be more than the Nefesh Elokis? And why should it be that way? Understand my question? The idea that I can get my Nefesh Bahamis to also be on fire, I can understand. But how could Nefesh Bahamis have more fire than Nefesh Elokis? The example is bringing that just like Begashmias, animals have more strength than humans. If a person would have to have a wrestling match with an ox, I doubt if they'd win. But if you tame the ox could do things for you that you couldn't do. A horse, if you get on a horse, you can ride and get places that yourself, you couldn't climb up this mountain, you couldn't get there so fast, you couldn't go so far, and the horse can do it. So animals, if you tame them and you're able to do the right thing, not only they're also useful, they can get you places that you can't even get them. So Nefesh Bahamis could do more even for the Nefesh Elokis. But my only question is, how? So this is related to something we explained earlier. Do you remember we had a class we spoke about love like fire and love like water? The difference? Mm-hmm. That love like fire is a love that's very intense. And love like water is a love that it's cold. It could be deep, but it still doesn't have that intense fire. And we gave an example. Not always, it doesn't mean because the love is less, but on the contrary, because it's deeper. We gave the example of human beings who love themselves. That's natural for every person. And in fact, the love for ourselves is the greatest love. That's what the Torah says. Love your fellow like you love yourself. Nevertheless, the self-love, it's not intense. There's no fire. There's no thunder and lightning. There's no fireworks happening when I love myself. But when you love another person, there is a fire. How could that be? But my love is greater than that. So we explain because the love for myself, because I am me, I'm one with me. So that's why there's no fire. But if it's two people and one is on fire about the other, then there's the fire. So the Nefesh Elokis and Hashem are one essence. So even though the Nefesh Elokis has love for Hashem and could be on fire by Hashem, but it's a different kind of fire. The Nefesh Bahamis is separate from Hashem. So when he gets excited and on fire, that fire could be much more intense than Nefesh Elokis. Or like the difference between a tzaddik and a Baal Tshuva. That the love that a Baal Tshuva has for Hashem is much more intense than a tzaddik. And the reason is because the tzaddik was always with Hashem, but here's a person who was away and now comes closer. Again, there's a certain distance, so the love for Hashem becomes more intense. So the Nefesh Bahamis' love becomes even greater than the love that the Nefesh Elokis has. Greater meaning to say more intense. Yeah.
So we've mentioned both speaking the Nefesh Bahamis' language and taming it. We need to do both of those in order to get it to properly serve Hashem and be excited for Hashem.
So really taming it, I don't have to necessarily get it excited. I can just discipline it. And I tell Nefesh Bahamis, just like lahavdil with an animal. I don't have to get the animal to be anywhere different than what an animal is, but I can tame it that it doesn't do things that are destructive and it follows the orders that I give it. And in that sense, I've already accomplished one thing. So if I get my Nefesh Bahamis not to do averos and to do mitzvahs and to be more disciplined, then that's called taming it. That's one thing. The other thing is, more than that, I'm getting the Nefesh to be excited about Hashem. And that comes through this process of learning and understanding in a way that my Nefesh could relate to. Page 44. And just like by bringing a gashmizik carbon, it's brought down in Tanya that when they brought a carbon, it elevated the sparks that are found in the gashmizik world. And these sparks are found in every realm. It's in daimim, things that are inanimate, tzemeach, all the things that are in the plant kingdom, chai, all the things that are in the animal kingdom, and everything in the human kingdom. So, for example, the physical body has sparks in it from Tohu, and when we do it, we're elevating it. I don't know if I mentioned it yesterday, but actually this week is Parshas Vayishlach, and Parshas Vayishlach is the source in Torah, according to Zohar, where it talks about elevating the sparks of the world of Tohu. Where is it? At the end of the Parsha, it says, and these are the kings of Esav. So-and-so was a king, and he died. So-and-so was a king, and he died. So-and-so was a king, and he died. Goes through 7, 8 kings. And the Zohar says it's referring to the spheres of the world of Tohu that broke. Shviras HaKelim, they broke, and that's what it's alluding to, that they broke. So we'll be learning that sikh also with time. We'll get there, maybe soon. But this Shabbos, Tafshin Nun Bey, is 1992, and the Rebbe was every week saying something so earth-shattering, something really unprecedented about the subject of Mashiach. The Rebbe then said on this Shabbos that the avodah of elevating the sparks has been completed, finished. So what are we doing now? The Rebbe explained what we're doing now. But it does say in Tanya that when they brought a carbon, this elevated the sparks, which means when we saw the animal being included in the fire, spiritually what was happening is the sparks of godliness in the meat became reconnected to the original source in the world of Torah. But not only the meat. It says in Tanya that every carbon had involved daimim, tzemei, chai, medaber. Where's daimim? There had to be salt used on the mizbeach. That's why we have salt on our tables, because salt was on the mizbeach. Salt is daimim. Tzemeach is because there was, first of all, they used wine. Wine is something which comes from the plant kingdom. It comes from grapes. And then there was other carbonate that had flour. That's also from things that grow. So that's tzemeach. And then there was chai, the actual carbon, the animal itself is in the realm of chai, which is the animal kingdom. And then the person who was involved in bringing the carbon, that's medaber. So when you brought a carbon, even though it was an individual carbon, but whatever carbon Bashgacha Pratis was brought in the Beis Hamikdash, it had an effect on the entire world. And in the entire world, the sparks in Daimim, Tzemeach, Chai, and Medaber were elevated through this carbon that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash. So the same thing is Beruchnius. We also do that on a personal level. What we're doing is we're transforming the darkness of my own personal. We're transforming it into light. Now we go back to what it said in the beginning of the Maimer. And Hashem asked us and commanded us to make a Migdash, a sanctuary. I will dwell in them. And we explained that, why does it say in them, not in it? Why doesn't it say singular? Because it means to say kolechad ve'echad. But when I do my avodah with my personal Shabbamis, iskapia, but mainly the second stage, this leads me to ishapcha. In a kadiskapia sitra achra, when the sitrach is subdued and disciplined, that's stage 1. This will bring the light of Hashem to shine in all the worlds. And page 45, which means that it brings down the light, that's infinite, and a light that encompasses all the worlds equally. So that avoid is accomplished on a personal level by me doing this kapya. In fact, that's the main reason of it. Like, why did the neshama come down to this world? The neshama is something which is godly, and the neshama finds itself in a godly place, close to Hashem. And the neshama, no, there's no anything else other than godliness. Why did Hashem send the neshama down to this dark world, which has so much against godliness, things that are opposing godliness, things that are concealing godliness? And the neshama is like in a golus. And the reason is the neshama was sent down not for its own purpose, because it was already in a good place. The whole purpose was to elevate the guf and the nefesh habahamis. We'll soon see there's actually three things: my guf, my nefesh habahamis, and a certain area in the world around me. We'll learn about it a little bit later. In other words, every person has to elevate their physical body through doing things according to Torah mitzvahs. My food that I eat, the water that I drink, the actions that I do with my hands and my legs and my head, everything has to be according to Hashem. It elevates the body. The second thing is to elevate my nefesh habahamis. And the third thing is each and every one of us is also involved in the world outside of ourselves. There's an involvement with other people, a place of work. Wherever I am, I have a certain shlichus to bring light in all these areas around myself. That's why the neshama came down. It did not come down for its own personal gain, because it's already in a very hard place. Even though it's not the purpose, the neshama does go up to a higher level through the salvation. But the purpose is mainly to elevate the guf and nefesh habahamis. Let's do the kitzur, the summary. Page 45. Yuvayir, in this chapter, he explains karbanos v'avedas adam kiyakriv. What it means when it says adam kiyakriv, that a person is bringing a carbon from himself. Tzarich liyos mikem carbon. It comes from me, and everyone is capable of doing this. Then it says eish shalamayla v'eish shalamata. There's a heavenly fire and there's a natural fire. The heavenly fire is the fire of the nefesh elokis. The natural fire is fire from below, that's the nefesh habahamis. Ava the nefesh elokis, and the love of the nefesh habahamis. And then he says, how do we get the nefesh habahamis to have love for Hashem? Ava the nefesh habahamis, by the slapshus nefesh elokis, the nefesh habahamis. By the nefesh elokis investing itself into the world of the nefesh habahamis and speaking in a language that nefesh habahamis could understand and could relate to, that's how the nefesh elokis gets excited. Nefesh habahamis gets excited. So, when people, for example, are looking into Yiddishkeit and trying to understand why it's important to do this, important to do that, and really the answer should be that's what Hashem wanted, but we don't do that. We go beyond that, and you start explaining to a person how amazing Shabbos is. That Hashem gave us a one day in the week. Someone told me once that how did he become from? He said he was a doctor, and there was a bacher that came every Friday to put on film with him. That was the extent of his Yiddishkeit. And one week he told him, by the way, next week I'm not going to be here. And he said, because once in a few weeks, I take my wife, my children, we go away to an island. I turn off my beeper. In those days they had beepers, not telephones. Beeper means you can't even call the person, just make a beep. And they know you're trying to reach them. I take away my beeper, I shut everything off. I don't think I could survive otherwise. I go away and I spend my time there. The bacher starts smiling. I asked him, why are you smiling? He said, I do this every week without going to an island. That's what Shabbos is. You know, I can't answer the phone. I don't go shopping. I don't have to deal with anything. I just, everything's out of my mind. I'm just enjoying, relaxing with my family. And that's what got him started. But this is, if you tell a person, no, Shabbos is the day that Hashem's presence is more revealed in the world than any other day of the week. That's why you should keep Shabbos. Okay, I hear your point. But when you tell a person, could you imagine one day in the week? And I know many people will say that before they became from, when it came to different parts of Yiddishkeit, keeping kosher, mezuzah, tefillin, okay, Shabbos, 24 hours, it felt like being in a jail. You can't make any phone calls, you can't go shopping, you can't write, you can't get into a car. How could people live like that? In today's world, it's impossible. Same person after they became from said, only Hashem and his infinite wisdom could have thought of such a brilliant idea like Shabbos, that one day we cut everything. It's good for the nervous system, for the blood pressure, for the heart, just relax day. But it's MS, and this is a way that the Nefesh Habahamis could relate to Hashem's wisdom, but in a way that it could relate to. And then you take them up the staircase, go a little bit higher, a little bit deeper. But you have to start off with something that it could relate to. Okay, we have a few minutes, so let's do the review. So let's take out the workbook. First, I want to do the terms. That's page 13. The reason why we start with page 13, it's not according to Kabbalah, but it's because this is really part of a bigger booklet. And over there was page 13. The reason why it's yellow, that's already something according to Kabbalah, which I can't explain. Well, you know more Hasidus, maybe. What? I'll be over here. Chavivin Chavivin. It's really not a Hasidic term, but a lot of Hasidus revolves around this term, that the seventh are the most precious to Hashem. And this means seventh in years, the days of the week, in terms of certain tzaddikim, that they're the seventh from a certain beginning point. Like Moshe Rabbeinu was the seventh of Avraham Avinu. And in the Maimer, that's what he talks about, how Moshe was the seventh. And by the seventh, something happened which is unprecedented, more than all the six that come before. Like Shabbos compared to the 6 days of the week. Number 2, Ika Shechina v'tachtenim hoisa. Right? It means the primary place where the Shechina was, not it was also in this world. The primary place of the Shechina is in this world. Number 3,
Is or was or both?
it was, and then it went away, and then we're in the process of bringing it back. You touched on a question which I'm going to go into later, not now. Like, is it gone, or we have to bring it down, or bring down something new? We'll go into that. That's related to the Rebbe's mimer on these words. So the Sabbath Baruch Hu's what would be the full way of translating that? Hashem wants a dwelling place in the lowest of the worlds, one more part to it. Remember, I told you there's one more part that must be inserted.
What is the
Nis'ave, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem desired. Which one? Dira, the Tachtenim, have a dwelling place in the lowest worlds. Right, through our Avodah. We have to add, but Hashem wants it to happen through our Avodah. Otherwise, he could have done this in a second. Create a world, make it the lowest, and the next second, make it a dwelling place. So the whole point is through our Avodah. That's taken a little bit of time. 5,785 years.
It would have been much faster if he did it.
Yeah. It's going to finish before Hanukkah's wedding, for sure.
Amen.
Amen.
You got to be ready to have a wedding in Yerushalayim, please.
Amen. Amen.
Number 4, Iskapia is Hapcha. How would you translate that? Iskapia means to discipline, and Hapcha means to transform. Number 5, Birur v'zichum. These are words you'll find it very often in Maimorim and the Sichos. Yeah, that's birur means to take the good out of the bad. Zikr means to refine. They're generally speaking, it's the same, but it must be a more precise translation to each one. But it means to refine. Number 6. Oh, I guess we did have it in the Maimer, but I just said to you that's number 6. Chelka ba'olam. Every person has to refine his nefesh alakis, refine his nefesh bahamis, and chelka ba'olam means my portion in the world, which again means my environment, my home, my family members, people that are my social circles, the place where I go to work. Everyone has that limited space where they're involved with. And that's another thing that my neshama came down. So what if you were in 20 countries? Like in today's day and age, a lot of people, they grow up in one country and then they travel to another country and then they go to different places. Apparently they have sparks in all these places. And we have to elevate. Wherever I end up, hashgacha pratis, that means that's part of my avodah to elevate them. Can do one more, 7, and then we'll continue tomorrow. Kadiskapi sitrachra istalak yikara de kuchabricha b'chulu almin. So this is the quote from the Zohar, the famous quote. It's also brought down in Tanya, and this is the sort of the pillar, the basis for this whole idea of iskafia, that when a person is iskafia, which means they discipline the nefesh bahamis, then Hashem's light will shine b'chulu almin in all the worlds. It means the light will shine that's infinite and it's equal in all the worlds. There was once a mashpia that said that we don't begin to understand the value and the pleasure that Hashem has every time we do a skafia. So the Mashiach will come, of course we see it, but he put into these words, the Mashiach will come, the person will see the difference between doing a skafia 50,000 times or 50,001 times. In other words, every single time that I have a thought, a feeling, an urge to do something which I know I shouldn't, and I'm able to discipline myself, we can't even begin to understand the pleasure that gives this to Hashem. And in fact, the reason why Hashem made it happen was in order to get that pleasure. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll go to the next place, which is Mashiach Gula. And as usual, give you a chance to breathe in the middle. Say that breathing is very important for survival.
Allegedly.
Rabbi Majeski, I learned more of the Sikha last night,
Yeah.
but we got pretty stuck again.
Yeah.
The problem is there's so much Zohar in it, so our name that we can't
They
easily
do
translate.
translate it into, no?
They do, like, sometimes, like, they use this, I think this paragraph we didn't really understand, talking about the orbs, like the different.